All right, let's check this out. Let's talk about some serious COVID stuff right now, because this one's probably going to get us a little bit in trouble on YouTube. Daily Mail reports, is this the link between AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine and blood clots? Shot may trigger an immune response that leads to the life-threatening side effect in rare cases, study claims. They say about 30 cases of blood clots among people who got a dose of AstraZeneca's vaccine were reported in Europe. German researchers found signs of antibodies that attack platelets in the blood of 9 people who developed clots after getting the shot. These antibodies destroy the platelets to make up for the loss. The body overproduces platelets, causing them to clot. The team says that if their hypothesis is correct, the reaction can be identified and easily treated by medical professionals. More than 20 European countries paused the use of AstraZeneca's shot this month amid clot fears, but subsequently resumed its use. Officials in the EU ruled the rate of clots was not above that in the general population. But Canada on Monday issued a pause on the use of vaccine for under 55s, citing concern over clots. This is the kind of stuff that freaks me out, because we've seen a bunch of stories, and this is what pisses me off. A bunch of stories where they're like, man gets shot, shortly after dies. Huh. And then you read the story, it's like 1 month later he died and he was 75 years old. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, dude, we really need to know about this stuff. And you got a bunch of media that wants to just freak us out and scare us. This is legit, though. And I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube gets mad at us for even talking about it, but this is a legit NewsGuard certified source, Daily Mail. And they're saying in Europe, they suspended it briefly. In Canada, they're suspending it. So I don't know what you guys think about this. But this, to me, I think, they're going to go after people calling them anti-vax if they bring anything like this up. And that's the more dangerous thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, it's a real thing that's happening. The governments are having to suspend it. But then if you're critical of it, or if you're skeptical, or if you're nervous about taking it yourself, then you're this crazy anti-vax monster who believes disinformation, and you can't even discuss it. So everybody's hiding in shame, being freaked out about this thing, and nobody can even talk about it.
Vaccines are amazing technology, yes. But if they're misused, they're super dangerous and can kill people. So that's why they have all this massive testing, and they make them go through years of trials and stuff. Why would you ever want to put yourself in a position where you might get blood clots for something, unless that thing is super deadly and gonna cripple you or something?
What we have to look at is the rate at which people got blood clots and the COVID survival rate for someone who's under 55. I got to tell you, I don't see a reason why people who are under 55 should be taking a medication that's been suspended by the government. If Canada says don't take it, then the people in Canada probably can't do it, which means the passport thing, the whole vaccine passport thing is broken. It's not going to work. The survival rate for people under 55, I think, is 99.995 or some really high number. It's super high. Young people are not being negatively impacted by this. It's almost like a large voting block of older people are worried about this and pushing for this. And that's kind of been the narrative for most of my life. Older people wanted Social Security, so they vote to put money into it. Then they take from it. The system collapses. It's always been
geez, look at Congress. They're all not all of them, but a lot of them are over 70.
Nancy Pelosi is she's 80, right?
Yeah.
It's super old.
A very broken system when you're sacrificing your children to save the old. I everybody's going to call me a monster for saying that, I guess, but our children are committing suicide at super high rates right now. They're suffering from depression. They're, abused children are stuck at home and not seeing teachers who could get them out of that situation. There's all these horrible negative effects of what they're doing for children right now. And all of this comes down to people who are older are afraid. And so we're sacrificing our youth in multiple ways.
Have you seen these these videos of the kids sitting at their desks and they're 6 feet apart and surrounded by plexiglass?
Yeah. It's horrible.
These kids are going to be very, very developmentally stunted.
Did you see the mother giving birth, and there's a plastic tarp between her and the baby, and she squeezes the baby against the plastic?
Creepy.
The baby's getting its face smushed on the plastic tarp.
I thought babies and the super young were fine, COVID wasn't affecting them. They kids in schools weren't being affected or whatever.
Yeah.
People are living in terror and they're being irrational.
Dude, these stories, I'll tell you, the big problem is that a sane and rational population would say, hey, Canada is suspending this over blood clot fears. Should we consider something like that in the U.S. and look to these other countries in terms of their medical prowess and endeavors? I mean, we hear all the time from the left about the healthcare systems of these other countries being infinitely better than ours. There was recently a story where I guess like Norway was calling the U.S. an underdeveloped medical system, which is just ridiculous, by the way. It was clearly just the stupidest thing ever. Like, you may talk about the payment systems being screwed up in pharmaceutical companies and the way the money goes into the insurance companies. Fine. But we got advanced technology here in terms of medicine. But they were mocking the U.S. saying underdeveloped. It was like, be wary of traveling to countries with underdeveloped healthcare systems. For example, the United States. Ha, ha, ha. Very funny. Yet tons of people come here for medication. Anyway, the point is, if we can't have a conversation about, okay, fine, these other countries are taking this seriously, then we're in trouble.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It's almost as if we have an overly qualified medical, like basically what I'm thinking about is potassium bromate, or I think it's bromide or bromate. It's a leavening agent in bread that's causes cancer. It's been known to be carcinogenic, and most of Europe has banned it from their bread products, but the United States has not. So it's a big problem that the pharmaceutical chemical industry has more sway than common sense sometimes.
What I'm saying is that I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about the fact that we'll be like, wow, Canada is suspending their vaccine for people under 55. They're going to call us anti-vaxxers. They're going to insult and smear and say they were questioning it. And it's like, no, dude.
And the leavening agent is obviously, there's evidence that it's carcinogenic, yet the media, why would the media not be like, well, let's get it out of our bread products if it's causing cancer in people?
They don't care. Like that's not in the news cycle.
Like they want to sell that stuff.
Brominated vegetable oils and like.
Oh, it's so bad for people too. And
sure. Like
evidently,
listen, the media cares about protecting the status quo and the establishment. There's no national conversation about bromine. There's a national conversation about COVID and vaccines, and so they want to toe the line. They want to mimic the status quo, and they want to write what other outlets write. And if they find you as an other, it'll work. I think the big problem, it's really annoying to me. Are we really in the minority, or are we the silent majority? Which is it? Is this country 80% a bunch of really dumb people who are like, I'm not going to talk about anything, and I'm going to sit here and plug my ears and just do whatever I'm told?
Terrifyingly, the data says yes. I think that it's like 90% of people are kind of followers.
Yeah, see, now that I'm in my beautiful right-wing bubble in West Virginia, I just can't, like, it seems like everybody doesn't want it, and that everybody has common sense about it, that they think that people who are very elderly should take it.
Makes sense.
And that people who are younger should not, and that's just like all the conversations that you have with people in my neighborhood. That's what it is. And then you see it online and everybody just acts like that's a completely crazy, unreasonable fringe take. So it's very disconnected for me. I don't know.
I saw something really funny today. It was Brian Stelter from Reliable Sources asking if the White House press corps, like the national press, is out of sync with the American people or whatever. And I'm like, man, it took you this long. Huh?
Wow.
It's been like
children who are wrong.
Yeah, 6 years. Are we out of sync? You know what I realized is really funny? When there was a story in the New York Times about a party someone from the New York Times had been to a few years prior, and they were like canceled over it or something. And I'm like, what regular American is like, I'm going to turn to the New York Times for the important news? Janet went to a party 3 years ago and got canceled for being racist. Wow. That's the news I pay for, but people pay for it. Their subscribers, it's going up. They're making more and more money. Journalists write about each other, and I'm like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Who is this? But you know what, man, it's frustrating because I was we went out to a bar the other day, and there was a guy who made a really great point. He said, look, the vaccine's here. It's available. We're done. It should be over. If you don't want to get it, that's your problem. I'll be fine. Because he was like, he said he was getting the vaccine. And I'm like, totally agree. Why should we have a vaccine passport system? Why should we mask mandate or any social distancing when the people who get the vaccines will be fine? If someone chooses not to get it, well, then you're the one person who's going to get it. Nobody else will. I don't understand the logic.
Well, the logic is if you don't get the vaccine and you carry it, then you can transport it to other people. Or
but if you're vaccinated, you're fine.
According to Fauci, you may still need to wear a mask because you're not immune if you get the vaccine. Is that
you're not?
What are you going to say?
So I wanted to speak to this because Fauci and Joe Biden, all of these people are still wearing masks after they've gotten the vaccine. What is the point of getting a vaccine if nothing changes. I'm starting to feel like they're waging a war of demoralization on the American people. And this is still an idea in development because I don't understand why they're doing
They
this.
don't know
No,
if the vaccine is effective. We are the test.
They
This
do.
is the
They
test.
do. They do know if it's effective.
I mean,
they've done numerous tests. The issue is safety versus freedom. It is easier for them to be like, I would rather just be safe. Peter Hitchens wrote this op-ed about getting the vaccine, and he was like, I got the vaccine, and all it cost me was my freedom. And I'm like, look, man, I think the bigger issue is that there's no trust in our public institutions anymore. We're hyper polarized, and we don't like each other. Because if we were actually a unified country combating this great villain, we would be like, yes, we got to get everyone vaccinated. We'd be like cheering for it.
Yeah,
And it would
like
be only a
post
few
9/11.
people who opposed it. Yeah, exactly. Everyone comes together.
Right.
No, we're fractured. Nobody trusts each other. The media's garbage. They're like writing about each other and other nonsense. They write about, oh no, Glenn Greenwald, we got to write about him now. Who cares? Stop writing about other people.
That's the problem with a lot of it. The media really killed their credibility during the Trump administration. I mean, they were selling the American public a horror movie, and now they don't have much else to write about. So they're trying to create all these villains, and everybody's just like, what are you doing? Like, none of this is relevant to me. And so when they do put out information about things like vaccines or COVID, people are skeptical, rightly, because for years we've been fed Russiagate and all this crazy nonsense
And it
from
was
the
all
media,
wrong.
the P-tape, like all this stuff that's just like completely insane that they've been feeding us for so long. How are you supposed to trust them when there's something actually serious?
I look at this. I agree with that. Russiagate was so stupid and didn't have evidence. I mean, or maybe it didn't have enough evidence to warrant that amount of. What's her name?
was
The girl
nuts.
with the short hair.
Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, Maddow's
Yeah.
obsession with it for 2 years. It was like
She nearly
God.
cried.
Oh my God. But what I'm thinking about is a level of cognitive dissonance also that we're looking at, because I think that obesity is a big part of this epidemic. And
Yeah.
like 60% of people, what were these numbers? I want to get
I
this
think it's
number right.
60%.
Of people that have COVID are obese,
Oh,
or 60% of people that are
78%, I
obese.
thought, yeah.
That's insane. 78%
I think so.
of COVID patients were
I have to check
obese.
that, but
Well, but look, I'll add to this. People who are out of shape, unhealthy, and sick are much more likely to die in general.
And
So you add in, COVID, which is, I think the mortality rate is like double the flu, so it's like substantially higher. And you're going to get a ton of people who have comorbidities dying from this thing.
And if they're
Healthy
like,
people are
I don't
doing
want to
all right.
stop drinking Pepsi, I don't want to stop eating red meat every night, but I want you to get a shot that may or may not work so that I can feel a little better. It's like, dude, take care of yourself.
The issue is they believe the vaccines will work. However, it's easier just to say safety over freedom. That's why I was bringing up that point from the guy in the bar who's like, we get the vaccine, it's on you now. It's your responsibility. I'm like, that's a great point. He was pro-vax. He was bragging about how he was getting his COVID vaccine. He was really excited. And he was like, and now it's your problem because you're the one who's going to get sick, not me. And I'm like, that's right. He was like a liberal guy. And I'm like, that's perfect logic. People have a choice to take care of themselves. They don't want to do it.
Or, yeah.
So the issue is, when it comes to Fauci, when it comes to Biden, when it comes to all these companies, listen, imagine Walmart. They're being told everyone's doing a COVID passport or whatever. And they say, no, we're not going to do that because it's on the individual. Well, then somebody gets sick and then sues Walmart, right? Because you can sue a ham sandwich. Doesn't mean you're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
So Walmart's like, it is easier just to go with the flow and do whatever we're told, because then at least we can have plausible deniability or reject liability in the event someone gets sick in our store. Then we'll just be like, oh, no, we have the passport. Everybody's supposed to be, So I remember when I worked for Fusion, they made me do this hostile environment training, even though I had spent like several years already in hostile environments. And so it was there was some really cool aspects to it, fairly rudimentary in my opinion, at least relevant to my experience. And I was like, I was talking to the people about why are they, making me do this? I have extensive field experience in conflict and crisis. And they're like, well, it's just good. And I went, insurance, isn't it? Well, yeah, because if I get hurt and then I say, well, they didn't give me the proper training.
Yeah,
So they're just like, it's easier to just make you do the stupid training course you don't need to do and waste the money and time, because in the event you get hurt, we don't want to get sued.
It's a big problem with corporations and insurance and all that, is that they look at people like numbers and they just treat us like a math equation.
I think we're seeing the same problem at two different levels. We're seeing a lack of responsibility in people who refuse to take care of themselves, and you're seeing a lack of responsibility from these companies who are like, we're not having anything to do with it. We're not going to assume any kind of responsibility for whatever happens here. And they don't want to be sued. I get it. At the same time, it's like you need to like have some kind of accountability.
Like they'd rather poison. I would imagine the corporate beast of Walmart would rather poison the population than suffer a bankruptcy.
So I think about it this way. When it comes to politics, do you think any one of these politicians actually cares about you? They can't.
Not me, because they don't know who I am.
No, they can't
Literally,
care about
they
you.
Can't. They don't even know me.
Because when they look at the numbers, look, if it was an election between 100 people, and they're like, okay, you're going to vote for me as 100 people, I need to win 51 votes. You actually could care about each of those people because you can meet them and know them and then actually convince them to vote for you. When it comes to a politician who needs 50,000 votes in a local election, they can't spend time knowing everybody. So they don't care. All of these systems have developed that way. Walmart, Target, whatever the store is, the movie theaters, they look at their numbers and they're like, we had 50,000 people come in this week to see a movie. We don't know who they are. We don't care who they are. 100 of them got sick. Okay, we'll ban those people. I don't know. We don't know them. They're just numbers. I'll put it this way. When I look at my YouTube video count, I see a number, 250,000. I don't know any of the people who watch that. The number is meaningless to me. And when I look at analytics, I see this in a bunch of other news outlets. And this is why the media becomes what it is. They don't care about the individual. They don't care about the ramifications. Rachel Maddow says, Donald Trump, an agent of Russia. And then all of a sudden she looks at the number and the number's bigger. And she's like, hey, look, it said 2.7 yesterday. It says 3.1. We should do the same thing again. Not realizing that she was contributing to driving people insane. Now, I absolutely self-reflected on all of that stuff and was like, I don't know what the solution is if we're all, genuinely having these opinions and we're talking about them. In the end, many people are driven by looking at their analytics, every company, looking at their marketing numbers, every politician, not caring about the individual, just doing whatever it takes to make that number go up. But that means people are driven by confirmation bias. So this is what happens to the media. Rachel Maddow is like, just keep saying the same thing over and over again. The numbers keep going up until they can't anymore. That's the reality here as well. When they're looking at, it's like a cost risk analysis. You ever see Fight Club where he's on the plane and he's like, if the cost of a lawsuit is less than the cost of a recall, we'll just take the lawsuit. Basically, that's the way it works. So you look at Fauci, you look at the government, and they're like, the cost of forcing people to stay home is lower than the cost of the risk should something go bad. Just make everybody stay home. And we used to be, we came from this group of people. And in fact, I'll tell you this, my props to all of the immigrants who are, climbing mountains and riding trains and wandering through 90 miles of desert to get here. Because those people have more pioneer blood in them than most of these urban progressives and suburban uppity-do liberals. Amen. Who are like, I'd rather just be safe. Now, these people are like, I'm going to cross a mountain and rip my feet to shred and be abused and victimized by cartels, but I'm coming to America for that American dream. I respect that a heck of a lot more than people who are like, I just want to be safe. It's like that meme, of the Shiba Inu being all ripped and strong. And it's like, colonists coming from Europe, dying on the boat halfway there, landing on a shore with nothing but trees and being like, I'm finding freedom. America today, just keep me safe. That's what we get. Now that's my rant.
I think that the further you get from these things, the easier it becomes to shrug it off. And I think part of the reason that Eastern Europe is still strong against communism is because they freaking remember. They remember what communism was like. And once they start to forget, it's all over.
Yeah. I mean, that was not even 30 years ago.
It wasn't that long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, Luke, who's been on the show frequently. I don't know Luke, you left all your steaks here.
Luke,
made us buy all these
steaks are frozen, Luke.
We bought all these Peter Luger steaks. Like, you got to get Peter Luger
He's
steaks.
like, save them for me. Keep them in the freezer.
I'll buy them.
All right, they're in the freezer, dude.
But anyway, he was born in Soviet Poland.
Thank God, that's part of why he's so
Poland
awesome.
was a satellite state of the Soviet Union, but he was born into that system.
It's made him
and
cool.
He left when he was a little kid. But I think it ended when he was very young.
His parents and his uncles and aunts went through it pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
And so he was told a lot about it. I don't think he saw with his own eyes. I don't know if he saw horrors. He doesn't really talk about the horror a lot. You really got to kind of pry it out of him.
Yeah. I would, what I'd love to do? I'd love to do like an ancestry analysis of the people who support critical race theory and where their grandparents were during the civil rights movement. Because I got a feeling that there's going to be some correlation between the status quo loving, uppity-do, anti-civil rights white folk and the critical race theorists of today. Either for one or two reasons, like it was a backlash. These people, you know, are ashamed of their history and ancestry. They're overtly racist. Their family's racist. And so they're like, yes, they're going to come out and admit their racism and then do everything they can to recognize and acknowledge all of these racial, you know, issues and everything. I wonder about that because you mentioned, you know, for Luke, his parents told him about what it was like in communism, so he naturally hates it. Mm-hmm. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.